So in an attempt to just throw out some of the ideas and concepts of the ways in which this is going to utterly transform everything about our lives in the coming years, if these people get their way, I'll turn to a number of sources. First, let's look at a surprisingly interesting and perhaps tipping the hand more than intended article from the Financial Times. Yes, the Financial Times, by Yuval Noah Harari, called The World After Coronavirus, which goes into a great degree of detail the incredible invasions of privacy that are on the table as a result of this hysteria. And just reading from one part talking about the types of surveillance that are going to be possible in the future, Harari writes, quote, "One of the problems we face in working out where we stand on surveillance is that none of us know exactly how we are being surveilled and what the coming years might bring. Surveillance technology is developing at breakneck speed, and what seemed science fiction 10 years ago is today old news. As a thought experiment, consider a hypothetical government that demands that every citizen wears a biometric bracelet that monitors body temperature and heart rate 24 hours a day. The resulting data is hoarded and analyzed by government algorithms. The algorithms will know that you are sick even before you know it, and they will also know where you have been and who you have met. The chains of infection could be drastically shortened and even cut altogether. Such a system could arguably stop the epidemic in its tracks within days. Sounds wonderful, right? The downside is, of course, that this would give legitimacy to a terrifying new surveillance system. If you know, for example, that I clicked on a Fox News link rather than a CNN link, that can teach you something about my political views and perhaps even my personality. But if you can monitor what happens to my body temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate as I watch the video clip, you can learn what makes me laugh, what makes me cry, and what makes me really, really angry. It is crucial to remember that anger, joy, boredom, and love are biological phenomena, just like fever and a cough. The same technology that identifies coughs could also identify laughs. If corporations and governments start harvesting our biometric data en masse, they can get to know us far better than we know ourselves, and they can then not just predict our feelings, but also manipulate our feelings and sell us anything they want, be it a product or a politician. Biometric monitoring would make Cambridge Analytica's data hacking tactics look like something from the Stone Age. Imagine North Korea in 2030 when every citizen has to wear a biometric bracelet 24 hours a day. If you listen to a speech by the great leader and the bracelet picks up the telltale signs of anger, you are done for." End quote. And that's just a small section of that rather extensive article talking about the various ways that this technology could utterly transform our lives. But don't worry, I mean, that's North Korea kind of stuff. That wouldn't happen over here, right? ... And in fact, like so much of this propaganda, it plays out like a threat. Because of course he's warning about these things. Oh, this could happen. Imagine a state that gets its hands on this type of surveillance technology and the ways that this could be abused. But we could use this technology for ourselves, and we could harness the power of it to self-analyze and monitor, and as long as we all cooperate and all voluntarily do what is expected of us in terms of social distancing and quarantining and masking and whatever else, then maybe we can avoid that kind of dystopian future being forced upon us by the powers that shouldn't be. It plays out exactly like a threat. Of course, they're saying, hey guys, either you comply with us or we will be forced to make your existence a living nightmare of total Orwellian surveillance and control over every aspect, not just of what you do, but what you think, how you breathe, how your heart rate, everything coming under the watchful gaze of Big Brother and his all-seeing eye. That is the future that is on the table that they are threatening us with. And don't worry, when the next bioterror false flag is sprung on us and whatever starts spreading through the population, then they'll have, the narrative will already be there, everything will already be set, and they'll say, look, see, you guys didn't practice enough social distancing, so we're going to have to come in and forcibly do this to you. That is this trap that's being sprung for us. And so once again, my mind boggles at attempting to in any way encapsulate every aspect of what is being put on the table here. But let's just break it down into some of the broad categories and some of the things that are happening right now and that are due to happen in the near future. For example, let's look at a category like education. Now, when you take everything and make it digital, then you are automatically making it immediately censorable from a distance, and not even necessarily by a human. Just an algorithm can detect wrong thought or wrong speech here or there and shut it down at the source. And we are, of course, living through that as I record this. Another GooTube purge is taking place. If only someone had warned us that YouTube might censor people. Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, well. It is happening right now, and as an example that I cited in my interview on the Great Reset with Pete Quinones last week, I talked about the case of a speaker at San Francisco State University invited by one of the university's groups to talk at a virtual lecture that was taking place, but there was protest. Oh, a Palestinian, so the Israeli lobby rallied, and there were Fox News articles written in protest, and it was canceled. It was deplatformed. Not even by the university, but by Zoom, by Facebook, by YouTube. The platforms themselves shut down the ability for an invited speaker to speak at a university event. And now it doesn't involve, we know a few years ago, cancel culture involved people physically going to these lectures and pulling the fire alarm and stopping people from speaking because, oh my God, I can't listen to ideas that I don't agree with. But now, don't worry, there doesn't have to be any of that messy human interaction. There's no chance for an actual physical altercation or someone to actually, reason with someone else. No, don't have to do that. Now, we can just flip a switch and, well, that is gone. You cannot give that speech. Literally. So that's one aspect of this, and it was encapsulated in an insightful comment that was left on that Great Reset video with Pete Quinones on Odyssey.com, which is the sort of web platform for the library protocol, LBRY. You'll know about that if you follow my work. If not, I'll leave a link to talk more about what that is. But on Odyssey, the Odyssey video version of that Great Reset talk that I had with Pete Quinones, Uncle Franco left the comment, at the very least, the Fourth Industrial Revolution will place the robber barons in between every human interaction. This gives the robber barons a fee for every interaction and the power to approve or deny every human interaction. It is every human's duty to prevent this infrastructure to gain government monopoly status and universal public acceptance. Undermine everyone who is part of the robber baron class. If they sell eggs, smash them or make them unable to sell them. Keep them up at night. Let your dog urinate on their lawn, and so on and so on. Never surrender. Once you begin to fight back, your life will have meaning. Try a small gesture today and see how great it feels, or not. The choice is yours. Someone gets it. Here's one of those conspiracy theorists. Oh, yay, I just used that word. Now that completely undermines everything he said. Yay, he's a conspiracy theorist. See how good that feels? Yay. It is. It's crazy, crackpot, tinfoil hat conspiracy nonsense to talk about that. Robber barons. Oh, I bet you're talking about the robber barons of our day and age, like Bill Gates. Are you saying that, they're going to put Bill Gates in charge of educating America's children? Really? Oh. Wait, yeah, I'm getting word. Yeah, that's exactly what is happening.
Well, let's take this experience and really learn how we can do differently and better with our education system in terms of technology and virtual education, etc. And that's something we're actively working on through this process. So it's not about just reopening schools. When we are reopening schools, let's open a better school. And let's open a smarter education system. And I want to thank the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We'll be working with them on this project. Bill Gates is a visionary in many ways, and his ideas and thoughts on technology and education he's spoken about for years. But I think we now have a moment in history where we can actually incorporate and advance those ideas, right? When does change come to a society? Because we all talk about change and advancement, but really we like control, right? And we like the status quo, and it's hard to change the status quo. But you get moments in history where people say, okay, I'm ready for change. I get it. I think this is one of those moments.
Oh yeah, literally. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is going to be working with the state of New York to reimagine education for this brave new digital technological world where all learning will be virtual, or at least a good proportion of it. And, well, we need the technology to better educate the youth of tomorrow. And for those who don't know, maybe you don't know because I didn't even have time to include this aspect of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation agenda in my 2-hour Who is Bill Gates documentary, but in fact, the main focus area for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the US domestically is education. It is in fact something that the foundation has been deeply dedicated to and invested in for decades at this point, looking at how better to implement technological controls in the classroom, monitoring of classroom and student performance and teacher performance and evaluation metrics, etc., in order to better educate the youth of tomorrow. Yes, this is happening, and you better believe it's not just going to be New York State that's going to be partnering up with Bill and Melinda Gates and their ilk for this purpose of better integrating technology into the virtual classroom. In fact, that takes many different forms, and we may have joked and laughed earlier about the ridiculous appearance of Grover on the Great Reset podcast. You may be wondering what that was all about. Well, actually, that leads into a segment with Sesame Street's president of social impact and philanthropy, Sherry Weston, talking about the Sesame Street program and its work around the world in various different countries and cultures, trying to impart these types of ideas about hand washing and other hygiene kind of things that we can impart to children. And oh yeah, completely reimagining the social fabric of various countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan and other places. She talks openly about the social engineering that they engage in to change people's minds in those countries, not just the children, who are obviously the direct target audience, but also the parents. And they talk about how they can manipulate and change parents' opinions. And of course, it's all for good things. It's, getting people in Afghanistan or Pakistan to accept women and girls going to school and that kind of thing. Yay, yeah, we can all get behind that. ... And what else? What else can they put into this messaging that will suddenly become this social fabric changing idea that gets embedded with harmless children's programming? Oh, remember kids, wash your hands, wear a mask, and keep 6 feet at all times from other human beings because they're icky biological beings that can shed their disgusting viruses around you, and we have to be protected against them at all times. Yay, hey, it's Sesame Street. You think I'm joking? Listen to the interview and listen to it from that perspective. I think you will find it as equally creepy as I did, but once again, education is just one aspect of this agenda. Let's look at business, the economy, generally. It was something that we touched on New World Next Week this week. James Evan Pilato and myself went over the stunning, remarkable, who would have guessed it, fact that the rich are indeed getting richer as a result of the COVID-19 scamdemic. And of course, it is the largest corporations, the Amazons and what have you, the big restaurant chains that are benefiting because they're essential. They're allowed to remain open. Mom and pop, of course, have to close, and they will probably never reopen. So this is a consolidation of the corporatocracy. Again, perfectly predictable and predicted. Everyone knew this was going to happen. As I pointed out in New World Next Week, Klaus Schwab writes about this in some detail in The Great Reset, talking about how small businesses will be the most affected. So again, this is part of the plan for consolidation and centralization of power. Stop me if you've heard this. Another key aspect of the way this is going to play into the business environment, the automation of the workforce through these types of technologies, not just the blue-collar jobs, but the white-collar jobs too. And a large section of the workforce is going to be increasingly automated out of work. And so what does that mean? When suddenly it's not just 5% or 10% or even 20% unemployment, but when we're looking at 50% of the workforce that can't find meaningful work, what are you going to do then? Well, there's only one option. Well, we just have to take it to the next level and have some sort of UBI. And you will know from this podcast and the previous work that I've done on the Corona World Order and on the Greatest Depression and things like this, that of course the digital dollar, the Fed coin is waiting in the wings, literally Fed coin, digital dollar, your wallet that you'll get that will be tied directly to the Federal Reserve, so they can pump their stimulus money in at first, which will eventually morph into some sort of UBI, which will eventually be tied to your social credit and your vaccination certification and all of that. Again, I've detailed this in the past. We will be going through that more in the future. Other aspects of the business transformation surround all the kind of buzzword ideas that the World Economic Forum specifically has been pumping for the last several years. Stakeholder capitalism. In stakeholder capitalism, the businesses aren't just they're certainly not beholden to their customers. That's an antiquated idea. That's a naive idea anyway. But they're not even just beholden to their investors, their shareholders. No. It's stakeholders, which is everyone in the community. Everyone has a stake in this business and what it's doing to the environment and the way it treats its workers and all of that. So we all kind of have some sort of quasi-ownership, but not really, of these corporations. And so they all have to kind of listen to us. And who's going to tell these corporations what the will of the people is? Well, of course, it's the World Economic Forum. And again, you get this sense vividly when you're reading through their materials on these subjects, that it's going to be the types of people who sit at Davos and have these kinds of conversations are going to be the one who are going to set the metrics for how we evaluate ESG being environmental, social, and governance responsibility, which is now a key part of what every business will have to do. And of course, again, it sounds so great. Yes, we want to take care of the environment. We want to be socially responsible. We want to be governed properly. What does that mean exactly? How do we measure that? And how do we comply with that? Oh, here's this 14,000 page text that's going to be, you're going to have teams of compliance officers to sort through. Don't worry. The big corporations will have their billion-dollar law firms that will be able to devote however many man-hours it takes to sort through all of this and comply and go jump through all the hoops. Mom and pop in the corner, of course, will never be able to do this, and they will be weeded out of existence. But can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So again, utter transformation of business and the economy as we've known it, which of course has knock-on effects on society itself. And this is not something that they hide. You will have heard earlier today, John Kerry and others talking about the new social contract that will come about as a result of this pandemic. And this is something, again, they write about in the Great Reset book. And have talked about at length that there will be a new social contract that comes about as a result of the ways people are reimagining their position in society and their relation to government, what government can and cannot tell people to do. Remember this imaginary contract that you didn't sign and have never seen because it doesn't exist, that somehow is obliging you to do this and that and not to do that, this or that? Well, guess what? It's being changed. By whom? Under what? What say do I have in this? Will I get to sign it when it's finished? Oh, wait, no, again, it will never be written down, and it's not an actual document, and it's not really a contract, but you will be expected to abide by whatever rules the World Economic Forum and its cronies come up for how to live our lives in the future. What does that actually mean? I've listened to a bunch of talk about this. It still is 100% blather at this point. So, of course, they're not going to nail it down. They're not going to say what is the social contract and how is it being rewritten. They're just warning you that don't worry, everything you think about the verities of existence and what it means to live in a nation state and all this is going to be completely transformed. But, you don't get a say in that. They talk about other societal aspects of the pandemic and the scamdemic and the very real psychological effects that this is going to have on the unfortunately easily duped masses who will develop the various phobias about germs, and how that will reshape the fabric of our lives so that, how will we ever... We'll obviously never go back to a place where we can be in a crowded room with maskless people and feel safe with each other. So we'll have to completely transform society and rethink, and we'll have distancing and hygiene and obsessive hand washing and everything will be part of our daily lives, and masks will become commonplace and fashion accessories and blah, 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 and all the things that you've heard about the ways this will reshape our lives. And another incredibly important, much more important, really, in the longer term, part of this fourth industrial revolution as it relates to society is the creation of new classes, not necessarily based on the old economic standards, but based on biological differences that will take place as a result of the upgrades that are coming, the brain chips and what have you. And this has been talked about for a number of years by bioethicists and the like, talking about the gen rich and the gen poor, as in people who get the genetic engineering enhancements and thus are these superior human beings, will essentially be lord-like, almost godlike, compared to the lowly biological humans, that the Terrans, as they say, that inhabit this planet. Well, we're going off-world and we're going to merge with the machines. So ultimately, it's not just gen-rich and gen-poor, it's transhumanist-rich, transhumanist-poor. And again, they're talking about the creation of this new natural hierarchy that will take place as a result of this. So again, complete, utter transformation of everything you've ever known about society and how it functions. Geopolitically, of course, everything's on the table. One specific chapter in the Great Reset book focuses on the question of which power will ultimately win out as a result of this great crisis, this generated crisis. Will China win out, as some people are saying? Well, they were first through it, and they recovered the fastest, however that happened, and all, you know the narrative. And thus they're going to be able to get on their feet and restructure their economy. But then no, people are saying, no, it'll be the U.S. because China relies so much on exports, especially trade with the U.S. And if that's getting shut down, then the U.S. will be able to win that war of attrition. Others will say, no one wins. In fact, it won't be a big unitary superpower that runs the world as we've known, for example, in Pax Americana. No, it will be a new system where, in fact, it's the small, agile, nimble states that will be able to best react to the changing times, and thus will be the ultimate winners of this. So it's not one winner, but it'll be a bunch of smaller states, and all of the things that are being proposed. But at any rate, it is kind of like who will win this power for the ownership of the globe? Stay tuned to find out. We'll tell you, don't worry. Another aspect of the geopolitical fights that are taking place right now was explored on a very recent edition of the Great Reset podcast, where they were talking about different forms of globalization. Not that globalization is dead, as we said. No, this is just the next stage of it. But what will that next stage look like? And they talked about concepts like gated globalization, where you will have groups of countries that with similar outlooks, with similar agendas and ideologies, and similar approaches to the scamdemic, who will band together and form these closed-off global trading partners. They're scattered all over the globe, but they will be a trading network, essentially. And you might have competing networks in this gated globalization vision, which people might remember. Again, this is not a new concept. This is exactly what was happening in the 1930s with the various tariffs and trade barriers and the sort of alliances that were forming and breaking as a result of all of the economic chaos of the 1930s, which, kind of led to World War. So once again, another harbinger of World War III, which I have talked about extensively in the past. We will talk about more in the future. Again, that's on the table. Again, I cannot possibly encapsulate in this one podcast all of the various ways that this is all changing, but I guess that boils down to the bottom line of this entire exploration. One, this is a transformation, not just of business or economy or society or geopolitics, but everything all at once. It is in fact a transformation of humanity itself. It has nothing to do with any virus or any disease. It is a pre-planned agenda that is being rolled out now under a new guise, with a new name, with a new brand, to sell the same old swill to the public of control in a very few elite technocratic class hands, and that they will, don't worry, shape everything for our best interest. I mean, did you hear how many times they said equality and inclusivity and sustainability? They must have our best interests in mind. Right? It is a conspiracy. It is an open conspiracy, but it is a conspiracy nonetheless. It is not deniable at this point. I will, of course, as always, have the source documents, the things that I'm reading from, all linked up in the show notes. There will be lots of show notes for today's episode that I invite you, exhort you even, to explore at your own leisure, because, once again, this is an open conspiracy. It touches on every aspect of your life from here on forward will be under this process of transformation. And as our good old friend, what was it, Uncle Uncle Frank, Uncle Franco did exhort. Now is the time for resistance in every way and any way possible, in every way that you can resist against this agenda. This is the time for it, because, as I say, everything is on the table right now. As I say, this touches on everything, literally everything. And you saw my Corona World Order podcast earlier this year and the other work that I've done. This is everything that I've been warning about since the Corbett report started, all happening all at once, all converging on this idea of the Great Reset, or whatever you call it. Again, the Great Reset, let's not focus entirely on that particular manifestation of this idea, because like New World Order or whatever else they're going to call it next week, it's just a label that they can slap on the same package of ideas. And the World Economic Forum, of course, in the super class structure, just vying for its place at the table. No, you see, we're setting the agenda we're rolling out this new global brand for the New World Order, and everyone's talking about the Great Reset. So don't focus all of your attention and firepower on the Great Reset per se, but on the ideas underlining it, which, of course, line up with everything that the technocratic ruling would-be elite, the elitists, have been trying to urge us into for a very long time. Having said all of that, again, this is an ongoing exploration. I cannot possibly encapsulate it all in this podcast. In some ways, it's everything that I've been talking about for the previous 13 years, and hopefully will be talking about for the next 50 years. Unless we do actually derail this agenda in some incredibly substantive way. But it's going to take all of our firepower immediately, in the info war, of course.